Welcome back to my podcast series where I've been discussing management, instruction, and guidance of your independence. Health coach and content creator Nancy Brenicardi here. Please refer to my podcasts 1 and 2 for the basis of why I started Independence for Life. Today is lesson 15, and I'm going to be talking about human food being made with cultured animal cells. It is being produced in large quantities in order to be competitive in pricing. So let's think about that. Let's let that sentence really sink in before I get into the meat, no pun, of this podcast. So I'm going to repeat that sentence slowly. So let's keep that in the forefront of our brain as I describe the process and what this is. So it's human food being made with cultured animal cells in large quantities in order to be competitive in pricing. Nowhere in there does that say competitive in health, competitive in quality, right? This is about quantity. This is about money. To me, it means that the depth of the food manufacturers and the government's pockets are more important than the health of the American people. Okay, so with that said, I'm going to describe to you human food made with cultured animal cells. So in a controlled environment, in the area of food science, and emerging areas taking cells from living animals and growing them to produce food. Before these products come to market, the FDA and the Department of Agriculture's Food and Safety and Inspection Service, also known as USDA/FSIS, ensures the products are safe and accurately labeled and that the manufacturers meet all requirements and are lawful under the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. So what stands out to me in that paragraph is the word safety and is the word product, right? So if it's food, how can it be a safe product? So that's what is just really just like a red flag. So that right there is alarming besides the culturing of live animal cells, okay? The cells are taken from live animals and placed in a controlled environment to support growth and cellular multiplication by way of appropriate nutrients and other factors. So when I was researching it at the beginning, neither of these were explained. What I mean by that, the appropriate nutrients and the other factors. I did go back and look into that further, and I will get into that later. After multiplication, other substances are added to assume characteristics of muscle, fat, or connective tissue cells. Let me tell you, let me just stop because this is super alarming. Like, I don't understand who thought that this would be good for us. Examples of these substances are protein growth factors, new surfaces for cell attachment, and additional nutrients. And it's like I said, I went back and I looked more into that because to me that doesn't tell me anything. So I did some further digging and I will let you know toward the end of the podcast what that is. Once the cellular material is harvested, it's used in conventional food processing and packaging. Yes, they are using it to create food, processing, packaging, selling it. There is a formal agreement between the manufacturers and the government, and that was created in March of 2019. And it's not that extensive. So they want to make sure that the animals are alive while they're, taking out these cells, and they stop using the cells after they're slaughtered, right? So that sounds pretty good in this pretty bad situation. Then they give the guidelines, or in the formal agreement, they all agree that certain animals are okay to be used. And those animals are cattle, sheep, swine, goat, fish, chicken, turkey, duck, geese, guineas. I'm probably going to say this wrong. Rataties. It's not a rat. What they mean is non-flying birds, like maybe an ostrich or an emu. And squab, which is young pigeon. The FDA regulates the cell collection, the banking, the growth, and the differentiations of the cells with the regulatory transition to the USDA-FSIS at harvest through processing and labeling. And I'll go through that also. But the FDA is at the beginning of the process, and the USDA is at the harvest point. And what's not included or regulated in this formal agreement, seafood and game meats. I don't know why they aren't regulating those two groups, but that's what I found out. So now I'm going to go over the production steps. Okay, number one is the cell collection of animal tissue. So that's what the manufacturer does. Then the FDA checks on how cells are taken. They also confirm that they're from the right animal species, hence that list that I just went over. They check on how the cells are selected, and they check on measures taken to make sure the cells are free of contaminants like microbes or viruses. Next, the manufacturer bank cells are grown and frozen for later use. Then the FDA checks on how cells are adapted to culture and can sustain growth. They check on quality control measures for cell bank, including the identification, the contamination, the growth, and the behavior. Then the manufacturer transfers of cell bank and growth by supplying nutrients and other factors. They're transferred to a larger vessel to reach the amount of material needed for food production. Then the FDA checks on the nutrients, the growth factors, and the substances that manage properties of the medium. Next, the manufacturer goes through that's a hard word to say. Differentiation. I'm not saying that right, but that's okay. So basically, after the cells have multiplied, the environment is changed in ways that allow cells to assume muscle-specific characteristics. To me, that's is alarming, and the word is differentiation. Hey, I said it. Okay, so differentiation is after the cells have multiplied, the environment is changed in ways that allow cells to assume muscle-specific characteristics. The FDA then checks on hazards at each production step, how food safety control measures are applied, and how the growth and health of the cell cultures are measured during production. And lastly, of the production steps, there's the harvesting, right? The harvest material for use in conventional food processing and packaging. Then the FDA checks on the identification, makeup, potential residues, and food contamination. So that's the process that they go through to cultivate these cells from live animals to make food for us to eat. Aren't we lucky? Super lucky that our government has our back. And if you listen to my podcast, you already know how I feel about the FDA. Not a fan. So now you can add the USDA to my list of not a fan. So I looked into this further just to see what the food label would say. And they use two different terms, and you'll see them directly alongside the product name. So when you're looking at your packaged meat at the grocery store, look for either one of these terms. One would be cell cultivated or cell cultured. So when I look at, if I come across that, because now I'm going to start looking for that because I didn't know about it, I'm going to avoid that. So then I also said, well, who's doing this? Who's using these measures? So food tech manufacturers and producers creating cell cultivated meat products. And I found 3 of them. One of them is called Good Meat, parentheses, Eat Just. The next is Upside Foods, and the next is Alif Farms. So then we can also Google, what labels that they have out there in their grocery stores. But if you just pick up your package, look next to the food product name for those 2 terms and avoid that. That's what I'm going to do. Then I said, well, because it's the year 26, I'm like, when did this start? Because somebody just brought this to my attention, and I was like, oh my, what is that about? That would be July of the year 23. Yes, 3 years ago, this started. And then I said, well, did they notify us of this? And how did they notify us? And yes, they did, by way of major national news saying that it was approved for sale. But each state, has their own way of doing things, and Florida, Alabama, and Texas have banned this. Good for them. So this has been around for a while. I didn't know about it, but now that I know about it, I'm bringing it to you because that's what I do. I try to arm you with information so you can get out there in the battlefield and fight for your best life. Yes? Earlier, I was talking about appropriate nutrients and other factors because I told you when I first started reading this article, that's what they said, and they just left it there. I'm like, well, what does that mean, right? So I looked at it further, so I'm going to go back to it. It says appropriate nutrients and other factors. In the production of this meat, it relies on liquid growth medium containing, now I have a list for you, okay, of what this is containing. The nutrients, the other factors coming into play. So the nutrients that they put in there are the amino acids, which are building blocks for proteins and cellular structures. They put glucose, which is a sugar, is the primary carbons and energy source for cellular metabolism, and vitamins and minerals, and that promotes cellular growth. It protects against oxidative stress and regulates internal functioning. They also put in inorganic salts, which maintains osmotic balance and overall physiological stability. And then the other factors would be, you have growth factors and hormones. They trigger cells to multiply and specialize into muscle or fat. Also, you have scaffolding, which is edible 3D physical frameworks made from plants, animals, or synthetic polymers that give cells a surface to attach to and guide them into structural muscle fibers. I looked up what synthetic polymers were because I wanted to make sure exactly what I was telling you was understandable, because I didn't know what that was. And synthetic polymers, ready? Plastic, nylon, and polyester. And also is provided, oxygen is provided to multiply animal cells into edible tissue and to resemble live animal core conditions. All of this is horrifying, disgusting. I'm almost speechless. I don't understand how our government can say, sure, go ahead and do this because you want to line your pocket with more money, and to hell with the American people. I just don't understand this, and how that this can be approved, and how it was supposedly told to the American people by way of major national news channels, and why no one's doing anything about it. I just don't know. So that's what's out there. Look for the labels, right? Cell cultivated or cell cultured directly alongside the product name. So when you're picking up your meat, but whether it be red, white, look at that, look for those words, avoid them at all costs, because you're eating not real things. These are just products. It's with synthetics. It's disgusting. I'm just appalled by this. But I wanted to bring that to your attention. So that concludes lesson 15. Lesson 16, I'm going to be talking about water, drinking water, when we should drink it, how much we should drink, why we should, how we think we're getting enough, or maybe we're getting too much. But I just think water, obviously it's essential for life, and I want to make sure that I give you, again, the best ammo so you can live your best life. So coming up next, podcast 16 is going to be about water, and I hope you've been enjoying my podcast content, and please look for future ones that I will be working on beyond number 16. Also, I have exercise and inspirational videos on YouTube under Independence for Life. That's Independence, the number 4, Life. So subscribe to my page, guys. It's free. Check it out there. Hit the subscribe button. Leave me any comments or questions. You can also contact me by email, and my email address is ind, the number 4, LIFE, LLC @gmail.com. Nancy Bronick-Hardy, signing out.